right. Lucky last. Everyone's still awake? Everyone's still going okay? All right. How much of your day is wasted? So I don't just mean scrolling on your phone. I mean stuck in traffic, looking for a car park, filling out all of those forms for a new license, or, got to be careful where I look with this one, or those meetings that probably could have been an email.
Yes.
These things are a drag on our focus, on our cognition. And we like to think of them really as a bit of a background noise. But in reality, they're a force. They're a force that affects our cognition. I like to call this the permission field. So, for many of us, the permission field is just an inevitable thing we have to deal with. But if you're trying to do something that is novel, that's innovative, that's pushing the boundaries, what you find is a strong permission field is fatal to your cognition. So let me tell you something very interesting. A lot of the great breakthroughs in the world didn't come from the center of those permission fields. They came from the edge. So my company, Speed3D, we've managed to generate quite an interesting technology. It's used around the world quite extensively, I'll explain. But how do we manage to do that? The reality is we didn't generate our tech in a gleaming city lab somewhere. We did it here in Darwin. So why were we able to do that so effectively here in Darwin? And the answer is, it was because here, outside, at the edge of the permission field, we had the ability to generate our thinking freely. We had cognitive freedom here in Darwin. So, let me take you to a swamp in the outback. So this was 2020. We were doing our first army trial of our metal 3D printing tech out at Kakadu with the Australian Army. So we'd intended our technology to be quite robust. And the idea was that it would work outside of a lab, not just inside a lab. But of course, we needed to test that. So we weren't out there just for fun. There was some things going on in the world. Supply chains were falling over. And people were working out that when your logistics fell over, your organization broke. And there were certain people who were very badly affected by this. And defense forces indeed worked out that waiting for the supply chain wasn't really feasible for them. So there we were with the Australian Army out in the field. And they really needed to prove something quite radical. They needed to prove that they could exchange mass production, warehousing, global logistics for a shipping container that you could push into a swamp and allow a soldier to generate a new engine block overnight. So the problem was our technology was pretty new. It was our first time in a swamp. And indeed, we'd brought it out there with great determination. And everything broke. Everything broke. We were in this environment where the humidity was so thick you could drink it. And I remember looking up at the printer, busy making a critical part at 2 a.m. one night, and watching insects crawling out of this swamp, crawling over our printer, and triggering the touchscreens on our printer. And I remember thinking, wow, that's unexpected. Literal bugs. There were literal bugs. So, what did we do? Well, normally what you would do is you would file a report. You know, here we go, here's the test results. You would do some redesign. You would order some parts, and then at some point, you might go back and try again. But we were at the edge of the permission field. We had the capacity to do a little bit more than that. So, what did we do? We cast new metal parts in our furnaces. We took our broken fixtures and we held them up with, we held our wiring up with stout branches. And we worked through the night, sweating, under single red lights. We could barely see our hands. And we solved one impossible problem after another. And we got it to work. We got the technology to work. The soldier could build an engine block overnight in the swamp. So, as you can probably imagine, that changed our trajectory. So after that, the pandemic had proven to us and to the Australian Defence Force that this new technology was capable. So nobody else in the world had really achieved this at the time. This is 2020. So what did that mean for us? Well, it meant that our technology has now been deployed with many forces around the world. That same printer that we were fixing in the middle of the swamp, that same sort of technology has now been deployed in the US, the UK, Japan, Africa, the Middle East, and it's gone on to make parts in the field. I'm particularly proud of Ukraine. Ukraine's been quite a big deal for us. So, it's been a success in reality. So I've been out in various offices around the world of different defence forces, and the question I keep getting asked is how? How did you make this work in the field? Like advanced tech like this is not meant to go so rapidly into the field. How did it work? How did you do that? And the short answer is Darwin. It's this place. So, two things. It wasn't just having the test environment right there, that was very important. But the second thing was the cognitive freedom that we got from being here, being slightly outside that permission field. That turned out to be a real accelerator for us. So it gave us a years ahead advantage. What it meant was, not only could we push the tech faster, we could push our understanding of the problem faster than other places could. So this is something that's now gone on to other places. It's doing things, very important things in other places. It started here in Darwin. So, could we have done this in a big city? I often ask myself this question. I have some staff in Melbourne I work with, and I find it's more difficult to do that kind of work there than it is to do here. So, if you're in a big city, if you're working in a big office, thousands of people, you're working in innovation, you've got 10 layers of facility approvals to do, safety audits to do, your engineers have a 90-minute commute coming into the office. Can they sit down and do this kind of unfocused, deep work? And in my opinion, no, that just doesn't work. You can't do that. So this is something that we do here. So what we don't have here is this tax on our cognition that these other places seem to bring along with the permission field. So Darwin seems to have this power. And what it's taught me is that your environment shapes your cognition. So there's some engineering here to do around how we try and solve these kinds of problems. So Darwin gave us an extra dimension. It supported us in every dimension in our work. And in other places, I don't see that same effect. That's not the same for everywhere, though. So I should mention, too, a lot of people say, how do you deal with workforce in Darwin? So there's a small population. You want to have this fantastic tech team. How do you do that? So the short answer is, our whole tech team here was trained at CDU, along with myself. So I'm currently doing a PhD, as Steve mentioned, at CDU. But I've done an engineering degree and a master's of engineering degree here, and have many people in my team who are in the same position. So I think our tech team's quite high performing, and I would argue that you don't need Sydney and Melbourne to generate people like this. You can generate them here quite comfortably, actually. So let's move on. So it turns out this trick, this idea that Darwin's an interesting place with a good permission field, you can work at the edge, it's not actually a new trick. Other people are aware of this. So let's talk about the Manhattan Project for a second. So the Manhattan Project didn't happen in Manhattan. It happened in Los Alamos. CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, sits very comfortably in the Swiss countryside. This is Huntsville, Alabama, alongside Darwin. So Huntsville is the center of the US space program, the rocket program. So I don't know if anyone's noticed, but I've labeled those the wrong way around. So But this is the point, right? This is the point. So the population is very similar, the working environment is very similar, and indeed very clever people have chosen to invest and fund an innovation ecosystem in that place. So the effect that I'm telling you about today isn't something that only I know about. It's something that a lot of people know about, actually. If you've got a project and you need to deliver creativity, innovation, iteration, cognitive freedom, then you really need a place that's got the right kind of community to do that in. So for us, that was Darwin. Very, very effective place for us. So let me tell you about another one of our projects. We developed a new material on request from the US Navy. So this material is called nickel aluminium bronze. It's a naval alloy. It's used in maritime. It's extremely corrosion resistant. So most of the ships you see out at sea, if you see that gold material on the propeller, that's nickel aluminium bronze. Very, very long endurance material. It's very hard to make. So the Navy asked us, could we figure out a way to make that with our tech and save some time? So it typically takes months to generate that material. So we developed the powder systems here, and the printing systems here, and the heat treatment systems, the quality systems here with our team, graduates from CDU, and we were able to solve the problem. So we're now capable to print this new material, nickel aluminium bronze, a very complex material with our printers, and we can do that in days. So we've done that with innovation that's all happened right here in Darwin. So if any of you feel like maybe this isn't the place to do that kind of thing, I just don't want you to refer back to this message. So let's talk a little bit more about the permission field. So the permission field isn't just a place. It's not just a physical location on a map. It happens within organisations, happens within governments, happens within non-government organisations, happens within community groups. So if you're an organisation that wants to innovate, wants to generate innovation, it's a very common mistake to generate this complexity right in the middle, a giant permission field, to try and innovate right from the middle of it. And it doesn't work. It simply doesn't work, making it impossible to achieve the outcome that you want to achieve. So, you know, if you're preventing risk, if you're scared of risk, if you're punishing failure, then you're the kind of organisation that's generating an impossible permission field. Innovation just becomes impossible. So, leaders, investors, people who are thinking about what they might do in the future, how they might generate more innovation, what do you look for? So I think it's very simple. The natural instinct is to look for density. Look for concentrations of people, resources, equipment, facilities. I think that's the wrong answer. If you want innovation, you've got to look for places with mental clarity. You've got to find those places where the cognitive freedom is available, where people aren't bogged down in traffic, aren't bogged down with licenses, and they can get together at a table, work for 4 hours, and enjoy the experience. So, let me tell you a little bit more about our story. So, our story proves, I think, that if you step outside the noise, you can get amazing results. And again, I'm not the only person who's experienced this. So, our work here in Darwin has really generated results that have gone on to resonate throughout the world. I think we should value this about Darwin and places like Darwin. So let's acknowledge for a second, the edge might be a choice. It might be a choice that we make. It's a choice we make as a community and a choice we might make when we decide how to structure, how to architect an organisation. So if we put a lot of people, cram them into a complex system, you shouldn't expect innovation out of those people. You expect innovation when you strip all that complexity away and you give people time and trust and the capacity to work. So if you're doing science or engineering, or trying to write the world's next big novel, or trying to make music that moves people, perhaps you should be thinking about finding a place where that cognitive freedom is available. So, let me close with a question. The permission field's closing on all of us. all the time. Where do you want to choose to build the future? Do you want to build it in the middle of that field, or do you want to build it at the edge?